Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun.
Mantra Guru A Jotto Shikha Guru Gon Tar Chorane Age Koriya Bandhan Vande Aham Shri Guru Shri Dita Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnava Ishtan Shri Rupam Shankara Jadam Sahaganam Raghunatham Vidam Tang Shri Jivam Sa Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Ischa Vancha Kalpatarubhishta Kripasindhu Bevachapadidinam Pavane Vaishnava Namo Namaha Om Agyana Timananda Sagyana Jana Shalakaya Chukshushumunidamnina Tasma Shri Udve Namaha Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Putulishmana Bhakti-vedanta Swami Tanuni Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurumani Bhajani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Prashtat Desha Tarini. Let's begin our study of the Nectar of Devotion by chanting the verse which Srila Prabhupada has selected and placed in the beginning of the book from Srinivasa Acharya's Sad Goswami Ashtak. Nana Shastra Vicharanaka Nipuno Shaddharma Sangstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Chibumane Manyo Sharanyakaro Radha Krishna Paradavina Bhajananande Namataliko Vandarupashanatano Riguyugo Shijiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, and Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. In 1974 I was lecturing on this verse, in 1974 I was lecturing on Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse. They wrote so many books just to establish what is real religion. Shangstapako means to stapan means to establish, and shangstapan means to thoroughly establish, to irrevocably establish. And they did that by Nana Shastra Vicharanaka Nipuno, by Nana Shastra, various scriptures, Vicharanaka, analyzing them, Nipuno, they were expert in order to Saddharma, the eternal religious principles, the principles of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, Sangstapako, to establish that completely, irrevocably. Why? Lokanam hitakarino. They were simply doing welfare activities for the people in general. Lokanam. Formerly the society was not so much degraded. As soon as you give evidence from the Vedic literature, they would accept. So these Goswamis were making research from the Vedic literature, Samaveda, Rig Veda, Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Puranas, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam. You find in the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu evidences, Nana Shastra, varieties of Shastras. For instance, you can look in the list of references that are given in this edition of the Nectar of Devotion. This is on page 411 of this edition. And you can see all the different Shastras that are quoted in the Nectar of Devotion. So many different Puranas there, Adi Purana, Agasya Samhita, Agni Purana, Aparabda, Bhanjan, so many books. Bhavishu Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Brahma Purana, Brahma Samhita, Garuda Purana, goes on and on. There's a whole list, another page list of Puranas. And then specifically when you get to Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see a tremendous number of references from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as we hear our Acharya's comment that Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam, that actually on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established his Sankirtan movement. And here we're seeing that the important service of establishing the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and authorizing that from the Shastric point of view was given to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. The pranam mantra for Srila Rupa Goswami, we can chant that Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale. That the Mano Bhishtam, Prabhupada translates the Mano Bhishtam as the mission. The Mano Bhishtam means the desire in the heart. The Abhishta means one's desire. The mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shtapitam, to establish that Jena Bhutale, on this planet, in this material world. Srila Rupa Goswami has established the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this material world. Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vimal. He gave me shelter under his lotus feet. Narottam Das Thakur sings that H.I. Goshai Jabe Braje Koilavas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. That the Goswamis were ordered to go to Vrindavan in order to Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash, to manifest, to revive all of the places of Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes in Brajadam, and to also revive the awareness of the pastimes of Krishna by writing transcendental literatures. Srimad Bhagavatam was there, but even in Srimad Bhagavatam, actually we'll find that the name of Srimati Radharani is not mentioned directly by Shukdev Goswami. So although Srimad Bhagavatam is the basis of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Krishna consciousness movement, the detailed science of Krishna consciousness and the detailed practices of Krishna consciousness are actually all given to us by Rupa and Sanatana Goswami in the literature that they wrote in Vrindavan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, his preaching style was very spontaneous. Radha Krishna bol, bolore shabai, e shikhani, e shab nadia fichin neche, gonitai. Fichin neche, wandering and dancing through all of Nadia, indiscriminately. Radha Krishna bol, bolore shabai, shabai means everybody without discrimination. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's in a very liberal and a very indiscriminate, spontaneous state of mind as he's indiscriminately, freely distributing Krishna consciousness in his preaching. Patra bicha nahe, not considering the qualification of the recipient. Stan ashthan, or the time, place or circumstances. Jai jaha pai taha kore prem dhan. Whoever the Panchatattva randomly came across, they awarded them love of Godhead by giving them the opportunity to hear and chant the holy name of Krishna. So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching, also his preaching in during the 6 years where he toured South India, traveled to Vrindavan, and preached to Sanatana and Rupa Goswami. Mahaprabhu, as a sannyasi, he's traveling and preaching, distributing love of Godhead. So the important work of compiling the evidence and compiling systematic literatures, Mahaprabhu himself did not do, but rather he empowered Rupa and Sanatana Rupa Goswami empowered the 6 Goswamis to write these transcendental literatures, and in this way thoroughly establish Shtapitam, the Manobhishtam, the desire of the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to thoroughly establish that on this planet through the writings and through the efforts of the 6 Goswamis. And particularly Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada describes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami is described as the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, one who knows the essence of devotional service. His famous book, the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, is the science of devotional service. And by reading this book, one can understand the meaning of devotional service. So, Rupa Goswami is considered the senior most of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. He was the first amongst the Goswamis to receive the direct instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he was met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Prayag Tirtha on the bank of Mahaganga, and for 10 days Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami in the Rup Shikha. In this way, Rupa Goswami is considered the Rasa Acharya, the Acharya of all the rasas of loving Krishna, the different flavors and mellows of loving Krishna. Mahaprabhu instructs the Rasa Tattva to Rupa Goswami in his teachings to Rupa Goswami in the Rup Shikha. He instructs Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Tattva, in Krishna Tattva, and in the Rasa Tattva. In the Bhakti Tattva, Mahaprabhu is describing about the Bhakti Lata Beach and how that can be cultivated by hearing and chanting. And Krishna Tattva, Mahaprabhu extensively explains all, particularly to Sanatana Goswami, all of the different incarnations and the different techniques of bhakti, of sadhana practice. And Rasa Tattva, Mahaprabhu explains to Srila Rupa Goswami the different mellows of loving Godhead and the 5 principal rasas and the 7 secondary rasas, etc. And this way, because he was directly instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Rasa Tattva, the science of loving God, he's described as the Rasacharya. Srila Rupa Goswami was the exact replica of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was very, very dear to the Lord, being the embodiment of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstatic love. That's Prem Swarup. And in the Gaura Ganadesh Dipika, Srila Rupa Goswami is described to be the gopi named Sri Rupa Manjari. Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu is the most celebrated book by Srila Rupa Goswami. Thus, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the second page of the preface that we are generally therefore known as Rupanugas, or followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, and that the present Krishna consciousness movement is based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami. After discussing the importance of the 6 Goswamis, and particularly Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Prabhupada in the preface now begins to explain the title of the book, The Nectar of Devotion, and how he has derived the title from Srila Rupa Goswami's Sanskrit work, the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. So if we take a look at the title of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, Bhakti, it's a devotion, Rasa, mellow or juice, the Amrit, eternal and nectar, and the Sindhu, the ocean. So Prabhupada comments that nectar of devotion, we have shortcut the translation, nectar of devotion. Rupa Goswami's purpose is to present the ocean of Bhakti Ras, the Ras Amrita Sindhu, the juice. It's just like an ocean. The ocean has limitation, but that ocean is unlimited. Prabhupada's lecturing on the nectar of devotion in 1972, and he's commenting that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compared bhakti to a great ocean when he was speaking before Rupa Goswami. He said that it's just like an ocean. So I'll take a drop of it, and you taste it, and you'll understand what is this ocean. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just described just a small portion of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. Bhakti devotional service, therefore, is rasa, taste, and the taste is amrit, it is eternal. So just imagine, we can just imagine what is the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. The Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, the Sindhu, the ocean of the nectar, the Bhakti Rash of the flavor, Amrit, Bhakti Rasamrita, the nectarian flavor, which is like an ocean of loving Krishna. And that ocean is so deep and so vast that Mahaprabhu in the Rup Shikha, he says, I will describe to you just one drop of that ocean. And one drop of the ocean, from one drop of the ocean, Rupa Goswami has produced such a detailed and elaborate, such an enriched exposition on the science of loving Godhead. What a treasure, the nectar of devotion. Prabhupada has given us now the nectar of devotion. In discussing the title in more detail, Prabhupada is examining further that bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Rasa, that force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, the nationalist, is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationship whose taste is very sweet. So the relish or taste of the mundane ras does not long endure. So therefore Prabhupada explains one has to, in the material world, go through bhog and tyag. That one's going to work and doing all the austerity, that's tyag, and then he enjoys on the weekend. And then again he goes back to work. And in this way, one cannot remain in one or other constantly. There's the fact that there's alternating from one to the other, it gives pleasure and enriches the enjoyment. Without the suffering, there'd be no enjoyment. So this is the illusory type of happiness that the materialists are enjoying. Another example that we sometimes hear is if you beat yourself on the head with a hammer, then it feels good when you stop. So this is enjoyment in the material world, because there's so much suffering that the occasional rare opportunity, rare moments when there's no immediate suffering, then we consider that to be enjoyment, or we forget the suffering for some time. We consider that to be enjoyment. Bhakti ras, however, the mellow relished in transcendental loving service of the Lord, doesn't finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually. Therefore, it is called amrit, or that which does not die but exists eternally. Any action performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental bhakti ras stage of life can be relished perpetually. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasa or mellow turn into eternity. Because Prabhupada's words here are they're very profound. And simply Prabhupada is alluding to the fact that Neha Bikramana Sosti Prattavayana Vijate, that the activities that we perform in the devotional service of Krishna, these are transcendental activities that are eternally credited in our transcendental spiritual account, and in this way relish perpetually. They can be relished perpetually. The result, the prem phal, the fruit of practicing Krishna consciousness, the fruit of love of Godhead, can be relished perpetually. So after discussing the title Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, in the preface, Srila Prabhupada begins to describe his reasons for compiling the Nectar devotion. So some of those reasons we can examine and discuss. The loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of the Nectar devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 transcendental mellows. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society, even by such great attempts as the United Nations, because we do not know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The Nectar devotion teaches all men how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it's very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. We can just consider the profound vision that Srila Prabhupada has in seeing the medieval masterpiece of Sanskrit literature of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, which perhaps was known only to a few specialist academics in this planet, up to Prabhupada's arrival on this planet and preaching. And now Prabhupada has brought this sublime treatise on the science of loving God, as written by the most intimate eternal associate of Sri Hari, Srila Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada has given us the Nectar devotion, and he's considering that as a result of the studying, understanding, and applying the tenets of Rupa Goswami's teachings in Nectar devotion, the people on this planet can actually begin to learn to love everyone in such a revolutionary way that it would fulfill the objective of great efforts such as the United Nations. Such a vision that Srila Prabhupada has. Understanding that these great acharyas have come to deliver humanity and give them the light and give them the teachings in the style and way of life which can create peace and harmony for all beings. And Prabhupada is seeing that as he's reflecting on the preface of his great work, the Nectar devotion. I am appealing herewith to such confused men to learn the art of devotional service as directed in the Nectar devotion, and I am sure that the fire of material existence burning within their hearts will be immediately distinguished. Such inspirational words, Prabhupada, such an ocean of mercy. And what an objective, to be able to extinguish the fire of material existence which is burning within the hearts, and in that way give peace and spiritual happiness and sublime life to so many, just by reading the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada Gita. Having discussed Srila Prabhupada's preface to the Nectar of Devotion, let's continue and discuss the first 2 pages of the introduction. Srila Prabhupada writes, invoking auspiciousness. Prabhupada then paraphrases the first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. These first few verses of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, they constitute what is called the Mangalarcharan, or as Prabhupada has translated, invoking auspiciousness. The Mangalarchanam, it involves 3 different aspects, or it includes 3 different aspects. It defines the objective of the work, it offers obeisances, and it offers benedictions. In a literary work, offers obeisances and offers benedictions. So let's go through let us go through these 3 components of the Mangalarchanam as Prabhupada has analyzed and discussed them in his Nectar of Devotion. So the first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, which Prabhupada has translated here in the first paragraph, is defining the objective of the book. The Akila Rasamrita-murti, here is the verse as Rupa Goswami, or part of the verse of Rupa Goswami, Akila Rasamrita-murti. So let's read the translation as Prabhupada has given it in the first paragraph of the introduction. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the reservoir of all rasa, or relationships, which are called neutrality, passive adoration, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, conjugal love, comedy, compassion, fear, chivalry, ghastliness, wonder, and devastation. He is the supreme attractive form, and by his universal and transcendental attractive features, he has captivated all the gopis, headed by Taraka, Palika, Sham, Lalita, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Let his Lordship's grace be on us so that there may not be any hindrance in the execution of this duty of writing the Nectar of Devotion impelled by his divine grace, Sri Srimad Bhakti Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. So in this case, the objective of the book, as revealed in this first verse of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, is the Akila Rasamrita-murti, which means the embodiment of all Rasha, Bhakti Rash. And as we will discover and as we understand from the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, that it is only in Vrindavan where these different 5 Mukhya Ras and 7 Guna Ras are actually found to be demonstrated, and particularly the higher rasas of fraternity and parentalhood and conjugal rasa are only experienced and witnessed in Vrindavan Dham. So in that way, the verse is referring to the Akila Rasamrita-murti, the embodiment of all rasas, which means Krishna in Vrindavan. And awakening, therefore the objective of the book is Krishna in Vrindavan, understanding Krishna in Vrindavan, understanding Bhakti Ras, understanding how to love Krishna in Vrindavan, and as we progress through the chapters of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, we'll see the teachings on the sadhana practices to awaken our eternal love for Vrindavan Krishna and Braja Prema. Prabhupada's commenting on the Akila Rasamrita-murti. So we can enjoy Krishna's loving service in so many ways, not only by the embrace of the gopis, but in the fight of Bhishma with Krishna and piercing his bodies with arrows. Therefore, Krishna is Akila Rasamrita-murti. There are 12 rasas, either primary rasas or secondary rasa. Any ras, Krishna is ready to respond. To any ras you want to deal with Krishna. That is Krishna's position. So, the first paragraph has defined the objective of the book. That is the Akhila Rasa Amrita Murti, the embodiment of all rasa, and that is Sri Krishna in Vrindavan. Now the second aspect of the Mangalarcharam is to offer obeisances, and in the second verse of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, he offers his respectful obeisances to Srila Sanatana Goswami. That is in the third paragraph of the introduction, and in the second paragraph, Srila Prabhupada, he offers his respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Goswami. So Prabhupada also, in the mood of the author of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, who's offering obeisances in the second paragraph of his work, Srila Prabhupada also at this moment is offering his obeisances to Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada and to his Dikha and Shikha Guru Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, by whose inspiration I have been engaged in the matter of compiling this summary study of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, a summary study of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. So we have obeisances offered to Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Prabhupada also offers his obeisances to all the great devotees and and acharyas, and Srila Rupa Goswami is offering his obeisances to Sanatana Goswami, and after that in the next paragraph, Srila Prabhupada, let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar, and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. So we've defined the objective of the book, and we've offered obeisances, and now actually in this fourth paragraph also we are beginning to offer benedictions. And as Srila Prabhupada comments, we can read, in the midst of the ocean, the volcanic eruptions can do very little harm, and similarly those who are against devotional service to the Lord and who put forward many philosophical theses about the ultimate transcendental realization cannot disturb this great ocean of devotional service. So the benediction, one should become a big fish, that there is no evaporation. So don't be misled by the Mayavadi philosophy that you fall into the water. These things are explained in the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. So the benediction is that one does not get swept away by the upper sampradaya or by the misunderstandings, misled by the Mayavad philosophy and merge into the ocean. The sharks, Prabhupada comments, and persons are very fond of merging into the Supreme, like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The sharks who dwell in the ocean do not care for the rivers which are gliding down into it. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service. They do not care for the rivers. In other words, those who are pure devotees always remain in the ocean of transcendental loving service to the Lord. They have no business with other processes, which are compared to rivers that only gradually come to the ocean. Srila Prabhupada, at the bottom of the second page, he begins to give a summary. He's paraphrasing as he's going through the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. So here Rupa Goswami gives an overview of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. And Srila Prabhupada in the paragraph on the bottom of page 10 in Roman numerals, he paraphrases and he gives a brief summary of the whole of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, and also that this also will, the Nectar of Devotion also. Originally, in Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, the ocean is divided like the watery ocean into the east, south, west and north. So here is the Grantha Vibhag, the analysis of how the Grantha, the Shastra is divided, the Vibhag, the different divisions. We're beginning with the Purva Vibhag, chapters 1 to 19, a general description of Bhakti Yoga. We'll discuss that in more detail shortly. The Dokhin Vibhag, Shamanya Bhagavad Bhakti Ras, is a general description of the ingredients of rasa that Mahaprabhu explains to Srila Rupa Goswami. And then chapters 35 to 45, the Mukti Bhakti Ras means the descriptions of that's Pashtim Vibhag, is the primary rasas, the 5 primary relationships that one can love Krishna in, and the Uttara Vibhag, the final division of the ocean, Gauna Bhakta Ras, is a description and explanation of the supplementary secondary 7 rasas that one can experience in loving Krishna. So in this way, the complete ocean of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu is described by Srila Rupa Goswami, and particularly in our study of the Nectar devotion for the Bhakti Shastri course. Actually, we're only studying the Purva Vibhag, which has been the standard practice for several decades in our society now, that the Bhakti Shastri study of the Nectar devotion is the study of the Purva Vibhag, and hopefully we'll have opportunity to study the subsequent Vibhags later. Prabhupada's commenting, in the first part there are 4 waves, the first being a general description of devotional service, the second concern the regular principles executing devotional service, the third, devotional service in ecstasy, and then the fourth, ultimate goal, love of Godhead. So within each division of the ocean, we're currently going to be studying the Purva Vibhag, the eastern division. Within each division there's different waves. So in the eastern division there are 4 waves, and Prabhupada explained those in that paragraph, and here they are. That the introduction and chapter 1, which we'll be looking at in the next lesson, are concerning Shamanya Bhakti, in other words, a general description of devotional service. Chapters 2 to 16 are describing Sadhana Bhakti, which includes Vaidhi and Raganuga Sadhana, the general practices of awakening love of God. And chapters 17 and 18 are describing love of God, Bhava Bhakti, and chapter 19, full love of God, Prema Bhakti. So we'll be studying these sections of the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu and the Nectar devotion in the Bhakti Shastri course. Let's conclude our opening lesson with this comment from Srila Prabhupada. That should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. We should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instruments to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. Srila Prabhupada ki.